This is the Comics Alternative Interviews, a conversation with Karl Stevens. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews. I'm Derek, and on this episode I talk with Karl Stevens, whose latest book, The Winner, was just released from Retrofit Big Planet Comics. It's an incredible work that I've been waiting for a while, as you can see from our interview. But before we get to that conversation, I want to let all of you know that this episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews is brought to you by the good folks from Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There, you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off at the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those prices can be anywhere from 20 to 35% off of the regular cover price. And every month you can find some incredible specials. Sometimes those specials will be at 45% off of the cover price, sometimes 50% off cover, but every now and again you can find some discounts that are even better than that. And if you go to DCB Service right now, you'll find, as usual, incredible savings on a variety of comics, including bundles of titles from such publishers as DC, Marvel, and Valiant. And some that I'm particularly interested in this month are two bundles from DC, including the Jinx World bundle, which you can find at 50% off. And then there's the Sandman Universe bundle at 45% off at the cover price. Whatever kind of comic you enjoy reading, you just can't beat the great prices at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to dcbservice.com for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your titles there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you. I first talked to Karl Stevens in February of last year, and during that conversation, he had mentioned that he was working on a new project for Retrofit called The Winner, and now we have the book out, being released on May 23rd. We talk about his new work and its very autobiographical quality, no masking of any identities here, and its curious structure and fantastical interludes. But we also talk about his other works as well, including the Xeric Award-winning Guilty, his series of books that followed, all published by Alternative Comics, Whatever, The Lodger, and Failure, as well as his Pennystrips that ran in the Village Voice between November of 2016 and March 2017. Karl is a wonderful guy to interview, as you'll hear from our conversation. So let's listen to that now. I'm really happy to have back on the podcast Karl Stevens. I spoke with you a year ago, I think in February of last year, Karl, and it's great to have you back on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Derek. It's a pleasure. I enjoyed myself quite a lot last time.
Great. Yeah, I had a fun conversation as well. And I remember in last year's conversation, we were primarily talking about your strip for the Village Voice at the time, Penny, but we talked about some of your other work, and you had mentioned that you were in the process of finishing up a new book for Retrofit Big Planet, The Winner, and The Winner has just recently been released, right?
That's right. It comes out May 23rd from Retrofit.
Now I know what you're talking about because you were describing it last year to me, but now having read it, I see where all of the things really make sense now. But for those who aren't yet familiar with The Winner, I'm wondering if you could describe what it's like, what it's about, especially to those who may not be familiar with your work at all.
Okay, I'll do my best. I guess essentially The Winner is an autobiographical story of sorts. It's 104 pages, and about half of those pages are 1 or 2 page strips, I guess, that are autobio about this change in my life that happened about 5 years ago when I quit drinking and also met my now wife, Alex. And I guess they're sort of humorous strips. I like rant a lot about my career and various things that I guess bothered me. But then also like in between those are there are a couple of sci-fi fantasy strips. There's a like a werewolf story, and there's a story about death. And I just wanted to have these random stories in there because part of the autobio stories, I talk about how frustrating it is to decide whether or not I'm a comic strip artist or a painter. It's like going through this existential crisis. I mean, this sounds really self-involved, and I guess that's the nature of autobio comics. But you know, I tried to put a humorous spin on it to, you know, take away from a lot of the navel gazing, I guess. But so yeah, it's sort of a weird book. I mean, I guess you could call it like a book of short stories too, but I think like the autobio nature of it all sort of ties it all together. And even in the sci-fi stories, I'm primarily using myself or Alex as like a model for like a lot of the characters. So what do you think? Does that... Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, yeah, you did a good job of describing it. And in fact, you've highlighted many of the characteristics that I wanted to talk with you about today. Now, one of those is the autobio nature of this. And I remember last year when we spoke, every now and again, when you talked about your other autobio type stories, for instance, The Lodger, you described yourself, not so much, or the character as Karl, but you said the Karl character. So I'm curious, with both the earlier works, for instance, like The Lodger, or maybe some of the strips and whatever, and especially with this new book, The Winner, do you see yourself or the representation of yourself as more real to life or as a mixture of real life and fiction to where it's a Karl character, not Karl?
I think it's always like there's always a certain distance. I think it's still the Karl character, but again, like The Lodger, I'm using real names, and it's more. I mean, I guess the Karl character is closer to I am than the Alex character is closer to Alex, because the way that I write them is I'm sort of having a conversation with myself. So it's like less about her personality than it is about my personality. So, I mean, I guess in a way it is fiction, but I'm just using like the real life me and the real life her as avatars for that fiction. So it's, I mean, it is an extension to the Karl character that's in The Lodger too. Like, because I'm like writing it in the same way, because the Lodger was written as in like one-page installments, and I was serializing that too for a newspaper in Boston. So it's for the Boston Phoenix. So it's so I did write The Winner in that style. I'm like working on something now that's like different, where I'm like composing it more like a sitcom. Like there is like the Karl and the Alex character, but I'm trying to use the like narrative structure of like a 3-act like sitcom, just in like 20-page spurts. So but I'm like getting off topic of The Winner.
Yeah. No, I mean, what you've said really makes sense, especially when you describe your use of Alex, or the Alex character. Alex is your wife. The way that you use her in The Winner, because she's quite prominent throughout, but I don't want to say that she doesn't have a personality of her own, or the character doesn't, because she does, but it seems to me that throughout most of the text, her function is what you were describing, kind of like an extension of yourself that you're having a conversation with. In other words, she seems, or at least the Alex character in The Winner, is someone who functions as an anchor, someone who's very grounded, someone who will tell you like it is, who will call you on your BS at times.
Right. Which is like her personality. And
in real life.
Yeah. And that really is what the book is about. It's about, like the Karl character being anchored and Alex having a lot to do with that. Whether she, made me, I guess the unsaid, well, I guess I do mention it, just, she got me to, basically like clean up my act, to like quit drinking. And then she, fat shamed me into exercising. And
you even make a joke at one point in the book about fat shaming.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've really like drank that Kool-Aid. Like I've become that type of like, sober asshole where I've just started running instead of drinking, and like now I'm addicted to that. But that's kind of like a joke that that like we have is, like any time where, if like I see someone whom I haven't seen in like 5 years and they like remark about how I look, I always say that it's all Alex's fault because, she would get up every morning, like when we first started dating and like, go running, and I would just lie there hungover, staring at my gut and man boobs. So, so I just started doing it. But but she's been an incredible. Really, it's like a love story, or like a love letter, I guess, to her for really just being this incredible positive influence on my life. I really think that she saved me in a lot of ways because I was, really hitting rock bottom, and I was pretty lost. So, I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, and I can tell. And not only does she come across throughout in terms of the narrative, the storytelling element of The Winner, as being an important figure in your life, but also there are moments in this new book where I think, especially with Alex, we get her represented in almost a painterly way as a portrait. And so I'm wondering how she feels about being represented in your work in this way.
That's a question for her. I'm not really, I think she's fine with it. In like all the usual ways, but I really don't know. I think she just wants me to be happy. So, and like making portraits and putting her in my comic strips makes me happy. So she's willing to put up with it. So, but as far as she really feels about it, I haven't really gotten too deep with it because I'm afraid that she won't like it, and then I won't be able to draw her anymore. So,
does she read your work?
Yeah, she does. And she's always the first one that I show the stuff to. So, and like she gives me good feedback, especially on the Pennystrips. So she's been a good like laugh-o-meter, I guess, for those. So.
Well, something else that you pointed out when you were describing The Winner is the various short narratives of anywhere from about 10 to 12 pages that punctuate the text. There are, at least for me as a reader, 4 clear-cut examples of this. In Drakut, which is kind of a strange sci-fi-ish story with Pope Cat, which I absolutely love, by the way, Pope Cat.
Oh, thanks.
Amen. Then there's, as you mentioned, the story Lycanthrope, which is, a horror werewolf story. And then there are a couple of more fantasy-like narratives. There's the Cobalt Flame, and then there's Zella. Is that how you pronounce it? Which is Alex backwards.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying Zila.
Zila. Okay, so Zila.
Yeah.
But there's a fifth one, and actually it's the first one in the text. At least I'm assuming it's one, and you can tell me if I'm correct in my reading. And this is Sorry It's Been a While.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Yes, what you referred to as the death story.
Right.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting about this is the first time I read The Winner, that really caught me off guard, because this is about, I don't know, about a 10th or the 8th of the way into the book. And you kind of set this little interlude up by describing, meeting Alex in 2011, getting married in 2015, and how she, as you mentioned just a second ago, how she has really changed your life in terms of your health, your eating habits, your sobriety. And then we get Sorry It's Been a While. And this is a 10-page story where you narrate it, or there is there's really, I guess, limited word balloons throughout this section. But the majority of the text is kind of a disembodied narration, which you begin, "Happy 3-year death anniversary, my darling." I got reading whiplash there. I thought, wait a minute now, did his wife die and I'm not aware of it? And I started feeling bad about not knowing about it. And then I kept reading, and I thought, maybe this is one of these narrative interludes. Mm-hmm. and so, I just wanted to let you know that I wasn't prepared for that, and that kind of threw me.
Yeah, I really struggled with where to place that story, and I felt like it would have the desired impact if it was right there, right after I set up all the autobio stuff. And yeah, I mean, really these short stories are just exercises in a way, because I hadn't attempted any sort of long form or any stories that were more than a page, because I've been doing the weekly strips for almost a decade. And my first book was a longer narrative, Guilty, that was 60 pages. And then immediately afterwards, I started doing the all weekly strip for the Boston Phoenix. So I kind of had to get back into the game of just doing longer stories, or I wanted to, I always promised myself that if I, that I would eventually get back to doing longer graphic novels. So, all the stories that are in The Winner are sort of attempts to try to do that again. And Sorry It's Been a While was my attempt to do something really dramatic. And I thought it would be interesting to just write about, just a widow who is just writing this sort of imaginary letter to her dead husband. And but I was using, so I mean, Alex and I are modeling for the couple, but the images of myself are images that I used from the really dark period of my life, right before I met her, the early days. And so in a way, it's sort of, in a personal way that only makes sense to me, is that it's, about the death of that part of me. So,
what you just said is fascinating, because when, I told you my experience when I first read The Winner, that this threw me for a loop. I thought that, it was actually Alex who had passed and not you, but you said that in this section, it is the Karl character that has died, and the voiceover we get here is Alex. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Well, because on the last page, she's standing over the grave.
That's interesting. I did read something into the grave, although the name on the grave is George, and so I wasn't exactly sure how to read that. I thought that may be kind of a transition page into, like I say, back to your autobio. But it's interesting, because this is, I guess, just different ways of reading, because in this section, you get the panels with Alex in color, and then the panels with you, or the Karl character, in, I guess for the most part, a monochromatic look.
That's right. Yeah.
And I can see that now in that the lack of color with the Karl panels in this section suggests a kind of death. I was reading it, though, the other way, that the color panels of Alex were rather vivid in Karl's imagination now that she's passed, and that the kind of flat monochromatic color of the Karl panels had something to do with your depression, your state of mind, remembering her. Oh,
that's a good reading. I mean, wait, I gotta call Jared and tell him to burn all those copies of the winner.
No. I mean, the other way works. It's just that I went into this thinking that maybe, it was Alex who had passed. And so that influenced my reading of the section. So that's interesting. And I think that it is quite effective where you've placed this because, as I said, it threw me the first time I read it. And I think that this is the kind of text, the winner, that will, or at least should, keep the reader on his or her feet.
Oh, good.
Because it's not a traditional kind of story. In other words, you described it as a series of 1 and 2 page strips. And in many ways, that's what it is. And so it's somewhat similar to, let's say, The Lodger, or even what we find in Failure and Whatever, your earlier books.
Right.
At the same time, there does seem to be a storyline, maybe sometimes loose, maybe sometimes tighter, that kind of pulls everything together. And even those painterly sections where you will have, let's say, a landscape or a portrait, for instance, of Alex, it's almost like a frozen moment in time within that longer story.
That's right.
But then punctuating the, as you call it, the more autobiographical storyline are these 5 different sections. And the way that I read them is, this is you as an artist playing around with different styles. And in fact, there are moments in The Winner where you or the Karl character even asks Alex, hey, what do you think about that sci-fi story or the Lightning Probe?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's something I really enjoy doing, is just playing with like the fourth wall and like the reader, because like my style is so like naturalistic looking. And I'm often asked if things actually happened in the strip in like real life. And I think that it's like interesting, excuse me, to like play with that sense of reality, because when we look at a piece of art, we appreciate like the beauty and just the aesthetic, like formal qualities, but at the same time, we also want to know something about what's going on like behind the scenes. Like we want to know like the story about the making of the art. So I find that sort of rich territory to explore as a narrative, to if I'm doing these stories that involve a character named Karl Stevens, like how can I say things that like make the reader believe is true? I mean, like, can I write and paint something so naturalistically that someone will think that it's true?
You even comment to Alex, or at least the Karl character comments to the Alex character in the book at one point, I think early on, that you get tired of people asking you if what you've written is based on your real life or if your dialogue is overheard conversation.
Right, exactly. So yeah, that strip is kind of the epitome of what I was trying to do with the autobio narrative, just to really blur the line between the work itself and the reader. Sorry if that sounds really sophomoric.
No. So we have Alex, the character who's an artist, but we also have Alex's work, his actual art represented here. Now, I remember something that you were telling me last year when we last spoke, is that when you were pitching the idea of a strip for the Village Voice, that before you came up with Penny, which I want to talk about later,
sure,
that there were a couple of other ideas that you had, I don't know, maybe a fantasy or sci-fi story. And I couldn't help but wonder if these interludes like Dracut or Lycanthrope or the Cobalt Flame were what you had in mind with Village Voice at first.
Yeah, well, it was the Zila strip that I was going to
the Zila
pitch. One. Yeah, because I wanted to do, like, I've been reading a lot of old French sci-fi comics, a la all the heavy metal guys from the 70s and 80s, and I got into Barbarella, and I wanted to make like my own version of Barbarella. I mean, that's really the long and short of it. But to not make it, as cheeky, just to try to put my own spin on that. So that's what Zila was going to be, but then it evolved into something else. I mean, well, something else that haven't really started drawing yet. I don't know. I have this whole story with Zila and David Bowie that I've been tooling on for about a year.
Zila and David Bowie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much I want to say because I'm sure it'll sound silly saying it out loud, but it's basically it's like what happened to David Bowie after he died. Well, he went to this other dimension, and that's where Zila is, and she's tasked of like finding him. So that's kind of the story. But I'll probably never get to it. So, but yeah, I mean that was the idea for the voice strip, but that was they didn't want something that was that wacky, so that's fine.
Yeah, and for those who are familiar with your work, you're not known necessarily as a genre writer.
No, not at all. So that's something that I wanted to try because I've never really. I mean, I have like here and there. I mean, like when I was a kid, I mean, I was trying to get back into what it was like to be, like a teenager again when I first discovered comics and, just, reading like Michel Fife's work and like Benjamin Mara, like all these guys that are taking a lot of the, they're like my age and they grew up in the 90s and read all those Image comics and, I read all that stuff too and was influenced by it for better for worse. And, I just wanted to, embrace that and just try to like do like my own version of like a superhero or, like a science fiction or fantasy thing. I mean, if, it just seemed like it would be fun to draw. And then I got deep into just reading all these old heavy metal. So I got into Mobius and like Droulet and, all that weird stuff that's in there. And it just started coming out. I mean, I've been like a real snob as far as like visual art goes. I mean, I hadn't really like embraced like that whole facet of comics. I mean, I did when I was younger, but it's just, I just sort of turned away from it in the past 20 years, and now it's all coming back. And I don't know, it's like a lot of fun, and it's stopping me from like cross hatching everything to death. This really like getting in there and just rendering it. Like I'm starting to like develop this more fluid ink style. Because I've also been looking at like Alex Raymond and Al Williamson and like a lot of those realist guys from like the mid-century.
So whether it be through Zila or maybe through some other work, you do have plans to pursue more genre-based storytelling in comics?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's something that I really, really enjoy. And again, just with, just like visually, it's something that I'm interested in because I want to pare down just all the cross-hatching. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it'll come back, but I just feel that in doing the more genre type work, it's making me simplify. Because I do have a secret desire to, do work for the big two someday, maybe. And I don't know. I mean, like, I just want to expand my horizons. Like I maybe it's just like the encroachment of middle age where I feel like I want to just try something else, but also just try to do something that's like broader, I guess. Or also I've I feel like I've been sort of pushing against, what's been acknowledged as comics for like so long, and like why not try to make something that actually looks like comics instead of like an etching. Like I should just embrace like some of these like tenets of like the medium instead of just trying to do something that doesn't look like that, because doing something that doesn't look like comics hasn't gotten me that far. I mean, it has, but I mean it's not. I just want to see, if I could make something that looks like like a traditional comic book. I mean, I sound really pretentious right now, but I've just always resisted just making something that was like a simple black line that, just like these simple, like clear stories. I've always just wanted to make these detailed stories that were like quiet and like slow moving. So I guess I want to make something that's like faster and that like has magic and, just like something that's just more otherworldly, like something that, comics really excels at, and that is like something that is, like pretty unique to the medium itself. So, I mean, maybe it's a false step, but hey, life's short.
Well, what you're saying right now leads me to another question that I have for you, or at least a discussion topic, and that is this larger theme of the relationship between cartooning and fine art. Now, earlier you described the winner as kind of a conversation with yourself. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then one of the major themes of that conversation is this relationship between cartooning and fine art, because throughout this bubbles up every now and again, where you as an artist of one form or another, whether it be a fine artist or a cartoonist or whatever you want to call yourself, you think about this issue and you kind of wrestle with the dynamic or even the dichotomy between these two. I don't want to call them ends of the artistic spectrum, but two ways of expressing and defining yourself as an artist. Now, there are two passages in The Winner that I wanted to just throw up to you and ask you to comment on. There's one passage where I think this is when you're painting, and it's a page where you're painting and you're thinking to yourself, and you say at one point that your work is too illustration for fine art and too fine art for illustration. And then 2 or 3 pages later, you're having a conversation with Alex, and you say to her, "Am I a painter or am I a cartoonist? I need to choose. The fine art world thinks I'm an illustrator, and the comics world thinks I'm a painter."
Yeah, that is a true thought. But yeah, I've really painted myself into a weird corner,
so to speak.
And yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just like stuck walking that line. And I mean, I guess that's where the urge to like try to make something that's more cartoony like come in. It's just, well, like how do I get out of this? Like how do I mean, I guess I can just keep going and just drive myself crazy, and just, hopefully, people will get hip to what I'm doing. But I don't know. I mean, it is strange. I mean, I like had like a meeting with this gallery last time I was in New York, and he was really, it's like this nice, sort of posh gallery that's in Chelsea, and I was showing him these these like recent watercolors that I was doing, mostly portraits, a couple that were in The Winner actually. And, he like knows my work, and he like knew that I was that I'm a cartoonist too. And, but, after the meeting, we were talking about, like potential buyers for it. And he just wasn't sure that like a lot of his collectors would be hip to like the comic stuff. But at the same time, it's like, well, he's saying like, well, that's what you are. So, I mean, we could do like a show of your portraits, but, really it'd be like a hard sell. It's like, oh, there's this cartoonist guy who does these, portraits that are fine art. So it's, like, that's where it becomes a problem. I mean, it's fine to like talk about, aesthetics and all that, but really it's like a problem of marketing that I'm stressing about, and the fictional Karl is stressing about. But I mean, I am too, because it's like, how am I, like how like when you do walk that line, it's like, how do you like market yourself? And it's been like a struggle to just like figure out a way. I don't know. Do you have any ideas?
So I'd have no answers, but you do feel that you're in this in-between place?
I do, yeah. I mean, because I mean, like within comics, I mean, I don't think, I mean, like realism isn't, like that popular. I mean, especially like in art comics. I mean, certainly you could say that after Alex Ross, in like the superhero era, I mean, that, it's like there is a market for, I mean, I wouldn't say realism, but like naturalism, I guess is like the better word for it. But like certainly not in like art comics. I mean, like, can you think of like anyone that's published by like Fantagraphics or Drawn and Quarterly or any publisher like that like has like like realist that like isn't from like mid-century, like isn't like one of the great newspaper strips?
Not like what you 50s. Do, no.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just so like when you're alone, like in a certain style, it becomes hard to, get a foothold. I mean, I guess I'm just like belly aching.
Now, see, this is interesting because, and you and I have corresponded for quite a while, so you know how I feel about your comics. I mean, I think that they're unique and there's something that stand out because no one else is doing this. And so, I mean, I think something like this is definitely needed. On the other hand, from your perspective as an artist, you feel that this may be somewhat of a liability because it doesn't make you as marketable.
Yeah, but there's really nothing I can do about it, like in an honest way. Because I mean, I can only like draw the way that I draw. I mean, that's like the flip side to it. Is this like, one could say, well, why don't you, really change your style and just do something simple and pare it down, like, or something that looks like, just like something more minimal or like cartoony. And I mean, I get bored when I draw like that. I mean, like I need to do something that's just more complicated, I guess. So, but I just need to, again, I mean, I feel silly like complaining about this because I mean, there is really only one way that I like enjoy working, and I just need to like just deal with it.
Now, you described an instance where someone from the world of fine arts commented on your work in comics. What about the other direction? I mean, how do you feel that those within the comics community, and not just other creators, but also people in comics in general, in the industry, publishers and whatnot, look at your work as a fine artist?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how like aware they are. I mean, like I'll pitch stuff to, publishers, every so often, when I have something to pitch, and, I mean, I always get like polite rejections, and it's, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just, I'm not really sure that it like registers, that I have this other career as a fine artist, but it's, it is what it is. I mean, I got into that, to like Jerry Moriarty's books, and I mean, he was someone that I guess is similar, his like Jack Survives strips that he did in like Raw magazine, and then his latest book, or the like, Am I Up? Well, the Paint Tunist book. But again, like his style isn't, it's definitely more, accommodating to a certain, like craft, like certain level of like craftsmanship that's, or like a certain ideal, I guess, of like art comics. It's like looser, and it looks like it fits into late 20th century painting. It like looks like something that's sort of fashionable. So I mean, like I'm trying to paint like like a Dutch old master. I mean, that's not like a popular form of painting, but I mean, he's probably like like within like comics. I mean, it is, because like then there's like that aspect of like the fine art world that are, all these really like dark sort of stodgy, like realist painters, that, sort of are like sort of humorless and like a lot of browns and, but I mean, that's like a whole other discussion about like the fine art world. So I'm like occupying like these two, unpopular realms, but yet, everyone tells me that I make beautiful work. So and
that's what counts, right?
I guess so. I don't know. Like, is that what's keeping me going? I mean, I guess I must have something to prove with like by doing all this work. So, but I'm not sure what it is. This is turning into like a psycho like analysis for my compulsions.
Yeah, maybe we should rebrand the Comics Alternative.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I have to like invent something. Like I have to invent like a movement somehow.
Go for it, man. Write a manifesto.
Yeah, but I need acolytes. So.
We're talking about the relationship between cartooning and fine arts in terms of, I guess, your illustration style. But one of the things that I see in The Winner is for lack of a better term, the fine arts approach that you bring to the construction of the entire text. So, I mean, we get a variety of styles throughout The Winner. So there are examples where, I mean, sometimes your art is a little more on the iconic or more simplified, if we want to call it that side. At other times, it's much more detailed, with the cross hatching. And we have a variety of instances where we have watercolors, we have sketches. In other words, there is a little more iconic style. There are more painterly or fine artish styles. There are instances where you have pages or sometimes even panels that are monochromatic, that are interspersed with the full color that I think predominates the text. And then there are other instances, and I found this interesting, where the panels appear to be cut out of paper and placed on a solid color background. And you could tell that they're cut out and then just sitting or maybe glued to or taped to a board. Is that the case?
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, there are a few pages where it seemed that you had, and I'm trying to find examples of this right now as I'm scrolling through the PDF, where you have, let's say, a couple of strips on a page, and it looks like you have cut out those strips from another piece of paper and then laid them on a background.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. That was just a case of design, just format, because when we were putting this book together, I wanted, like, they were originally done as sort of daily strips, so these like horizontal, and I wanted them just to be on one page, and I just thought it'd be better just to cut the panels up and just arrange them. But yeah, I mean, I thought it would look cooler just to put it on like a piece of colored paper as opposed to just doing it in Photoshop.
Right. And, and that's my point, in that the way that you approach the construction of The Winner.
Oh, yeah, right.
Is you vary the art style, the representation, and not just in terms of your illustration style, but in terms of the way that you lay out, some of the pages or some of the panels. And I think that kind of variety in what it signifies is more on the fine artish side of things than on the cartoonish side.
Oh, yeah,
I can simplify things in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm always looking at like Julie Doucet's work a lot too. I mean, she's one of my artistic heroes for sure, and that's something that like she does a lot. And I'm always very conscious of like the artist's hand, I guess, like going into the work. I mean, I really want to see that, like I don't want it to look like was just done on a computer. I mean, I've like nothing against it, for other people, but I just don't like how it looks for like according to my work.
So you don't use any kind of computing devices at all?
No, like not really. I mean, maybe to like get rid of a coffee stain or something, but like nothing, as far as the actual artistic production.
Now, we were talking about this dichotomy, or even dilemma, if you want to put it that way, between, let's say, fine art and cartooning, and how maybe it's difficult to find a particular niche, I guess, within the comics community. Do you think that this relatively recent move to retrofit Big Planet is good for you, given your style?
Absolutely. I am incredibly grateful to Jared and Box for just letting me do like whatever I want. I mean, like they've been incredible supporters and backers, and I just can't like thank them enough for just being like the best. I mean, I really think it's like a really good fit for me, and I have all kinds of big plans for the next couple of years if they'll let me. If they're nice enough to let me keep doing it, or I should say Jared, because I mean Box has taken a leave.
Yeah, he stepped away.
Yeah, so it's all Jared running the show, and he's doing a great job. I mean, we've been in touch a lot these past few weeks. Just trying to get all the promo stuff together for the winter, but he really has it together. I mean, I'm really impressed by his professionalism.
Well, how did you get connected with Box and Jared and what they're doing with Big Planet Retrofit?
I just reached out to Box, I guess back in 2015, 2016, something like that. And I just asked him if I could do a retrofit book because I had been, I'd just been doing these short stories. I've been kind of tooling around, and I thought it would be fun to do an old fashioned floppy book. And, back then that's primarily like what they were doing. And so I just emailed Box just out of the blue, and we just started talking. And then, the winners
never met him?
I think I'd met him once or twice at one of the shows. I mean, he's, someone that's always been around. I think I had met him before. But just briefly. I mean, we hadn't really talked about anything like serious, So, I mean, like, either like related to the work or anything else. So, but I mean, he was aware of my work, which helped. So, and he seemed to be excited to like want to do something. So, we just proceeded from there. And then, and I forget, I mean, I think I just started making more work, and then, I think they got like the book distribution thing, and they suggested that I do like a longer book, to like fit into that model. And I just, started cranking it out. And I mean, it was a very organic way of like happening. So
now, you were saying earlier that your style throughout most of your career has been, I guess, strip based, where you have, let's say, one or maybe two pagers that even when they tell a longer story, these stories are nonetheless made up of individual strips. Now, do you see yourself, and maybe for a future Retrofit Big Planet publication, writing in a longer form that is not so strip based? In other words, something that is more coherently linear from beginning to end. What one may even call a graphic novel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really like what I want to start doing. Well, I want to do the penny book for next year. I have about 60 strips of that in the can, and I want to do about 40 more. So I'm like aiming to like have them finished by the end of the year to have like a 100-page book. So, I mean, I've talked to Jared about it, but he wants to see how everything goes. But since the Kickstarter went through, thank God.
Yes. I did my part to help publicize it.
Thank you, Derek. Appreciate that. Then like we'll see. I mean, it might be more likely, but I don't want to put him on the spot through the podcast. But like we like had talked about it. So, hopefully that'll be next year, and that'll be like the last, I guess, collection of like one-page strips, because that's what Penny basically is. And then after that, I want to do one of these longer graphic novels, whether it's like one of the fantasy ones that I've been playing with, or that sitcom one that I talked about earlier. So, but yeah, I mean, I would like to stick with them just because it's, they're great.
Now, for those of our listeners who may not know about Penny, because we've mentioned Penny every now and again throughout this interview, what is Penny?
Penny is a comic strip about the existential, sometimes humorous thoughts of a tortoiseshell cat. And she just happens to look like my tortoiseshell cat, who was also named Penny. So I guess the
Penny
idea is,
character.
Yeah, the Penny character. So like everyone's a shadow of their former selves in my strip. So, and yeah, I mean, I guess that was born. Actually, Penny was kind of Alex's idea, because when I was working on coming up with ideas for the Village Voice, one of the things that the editor there was advising me to do was to do something that might appeal to women. And so I just asked Alex, like, what should I do to appeal to women? And she said, do a cat comic strip. So it was really that simple. And I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I think it appeals to men too. So.
Oh yeah, I love Penny. I mean, I have a cat, but I wouldn't call myself a cat person. Yeah, and we should let listeners know that this is not like Garfield.
No, but like that,
much heavier.
Yeah, it is. But like that's like kind of the joke though too, is that it's like an existential Garfield, but like without, but like John is like us, because like I do have like Penny's owners. You like never see them. I sort of treat them like Charlie Brown's teachers. They're just like these like voices like, in the background that comment on like what's going on in reality, or like outside of Penny. But like Penny doesn't like react to like what they're saying, much in the way that I don't think Garfield ever reacted to the way John said anything. John said, like, did he?
I don't know, but it's funny that you mentioned this, because now I'm holding in my hand a self-published comic of Penny strips that you put out last fall, correct?
Yeah, I did that for the Cab show in Brooklyn, Gabe Fowler's show. Because it was in New York. That's where the voice was.
Yeah. But now you say that in your Penny strips, you never see the owners. Actually, I think it's the very last one, discounting the strips on the very back cover.
Oh, that's right. That is the only one.
Where Penny is in a closet hiding from the vacuum cleaner. And then the very last panel, we get the Karl and Alex characters. Alex says, "Where's Penny?" Karl says, "She's still hiding from the vacuum." Alex responds, "What a baby." And that threw me, because we'd never seen Penny's owners up until that moment. And you're right. That was like kind of an inverse Charlie Brown moment.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've really struggled with that one. And I think in the collection, that's got to be the last page. Right? I mean, that
would make sense. It's like the big revelation.
Right, exactly. But now everyone knows.
So you're thinking about, so you're wanting to come up with a longer collection of Penny strips. Now, Penny began with the Village Voice back in the fall of 2016?
That's right.
And then ran until the spring of last year?
That's right.
But you're continuing to do the Penny strips.
I am, yeah. I was doing them off and on because I've always envisioned it as a book, and it's gone through a couple reiterations. Like, I started doing these daily, daily strip, like traditional daily strip pennies. And the idea was that I was going to do like a full year of those. I was going to do, 300 10 or whatever, the daily strips, and then have like 52 color, and then have it look like a Calvin and Hobbes collection or something, So just have like a couple, or, like 6 of the black and white strips.
Another cat in the comic.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. I grew up with that stuff. And so, and then I was, and like that was like the original idea, but now I think I just want it to be all the color strips, or mostly color. But I did about 30 of those daily strips, and I was thinking of just putting those in the middle, so it'll be the like color, like bookending the daily strips.
So is this a book that you would ideally like to publish through Retrofit Big Planet? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if they're willing to do it. But like doing like a cat book is, as a side note, it's always been sort of this in-joke between me and, do you know Tim Kreider? Do you know his work?
No, I don't.
He was a political cartoonist. He has 2 collections or 2 or 3 collections that Fantagraphics put out in the early 2000s. But he like did this strip called The Pain, When Will It End? And it ran in the Baltimore City paper for a long time, and he like retired after Obama was elected in 2008. Now he just writes essays. But anyways, he's like a writer friend, and he actually has a new book out too. But because we're always just complaining about money and like what's the thing that like we could do to like completely sell out, and he's like, just make a cat book. That's like the golden ticket, like once you like going cat book, that's what we called it, to go cat book. I mean, I think we're having that conversation around when like Jeff Brown put out his cat book, so like Jeffrey Brown went cat book.
Yeah. And, when you do your penny book, then maybe as part of the publicity campaign, you can come up with a couple of cat videos to put up on YouTube.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Of like the actual, well, that's the thing. I've been tempted to do ones of like the actual penny, but I don't want to break that fourth wall,
Would you play the penny voice, or would you get someone else?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. That might be taking it too far. I mean, there is like a whole world of cat people, as I'm sure you know. And I don't know. I mean, I wonder how far.
I forget the name, but there's that dog figure in The Lodger that functions in many ways like Penny does.
Oh, Cookie. Yes.
Cookie, yes.
Yeah. I was just like we were just walking around the Arboretum last night, where like a lot of the strips take place in The Lodger, and I thought about doing like a strip about the ghost Cookie, because like she passed away about like 6 years ago. Like the ghost Cookie just running around the Arboretum. Yeah, I mean, like she was like so mean too. She would attack the other dogs, and she was kind of this legend like within that part of Boston. Like everyone knew who Cookie was because she would attack your dog. She was really like poorly behaved.
Okay, so you have plans for the penny book, and you also mentioned this sitcom-like narrative that you're working on, and I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more, if you feel comfortable talking a little bit more about that, or is it one of those things that you'd rather keep under wraps until later?
Yeah, it's still germinating. I mean, I don't want to talk about it too much, okay. But I'm definitely thinking about that formula. Because it was inspired by Peter Bagg. I've been really, I mean, he's someone that I, is an absolute. I mean, just he's like influenced my work, or like his work has influenced my work more than, any cartoonist, I'll say. I mean, it's like Charles Schulz and like Peter Bagg are like the 2 cartoonists that I always go back to and like reread when I need inspiration. And I just been rereading Hate again, and I forget what it was. I think it was like Tom Spurgeon or like somebody like that had been like writing about it, or like Spurgeon was on a podcast I listened to, and I think it was a Deconstructing Comics podcast, and yeah, they were talking about Hate, and it just got me to like go back and like read them again, and they were talking about how Peter was writing it. as like these sitcoms, like each issue was like an episode, and that all the characters were sort of based on Archie as well, like the cast of Archie, like if you think about it, like Buddy Bradley is Archie, and then Valerie is Veronica, and Betty is Lisa, so it's just taking these like archetypes and sort of like running with it, and that just
Stinky is Reggie.
Yeah, Stinky is Reggie. So it just got me thinking like about making my own version of that and like what that would look like. And it, so I just was like studying the formula, just reading a lot about structure, and I've just been playing around and like writing a lot. So, but we'll see. I mean, I wrote 6 issues, or I should say, like 20-page stories that they like all connect to it. But I mean, I was thinking that would be like similar to like a British sitcom where it would just be like six installments that have, like somewhat of an arc to it. So then it would fit as like a graphic novel as well. So
this would be an episodic narrative, but not episodic in the way that your, I guess, historically speaking, your strip work has been.
Yeah, it's sort of like the next step from that in a way. But I mean, it's definitely more complex, and, it just centers around these 4 characters. So.
Okay, so you have these comics projects that are going on right now. You've got your fine art, your painting that you do. Are there any other projects that you have going on right now, or that you're thinking about for the not too distant future?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have one that I'm sure I can't talk about that is a commission with like another writer. Actually, and then there's one with, well, I'll tell you about after.
Okay, off mic.
But that like I'm like hoping becomes something. Mm-hmm. And then there's the Dylan Horrocks book that I'm still chipping away at. But I mean, that's something I want to talk to Jared about as well, about maybe doing The American Dream, because that's something that I think needs to happen. And I've gotten so far into it that I can't just abandon it. So
well, okay, so this work with Horrocks?
Yeah. We've been working on that for a long time now, and I think it needs to happen. I mean, we like talked like briefly after Trump was elected, and decided that it was definitely the time to get this book out. So there's been like a lot of reasons why it's been stalled, but I think if everything goes right with Retrofit, but I mean, again, I don't want to like put any pressure on him through the podcast, but I definitely want to talk to him about doing it. So at some point.
Well, as I said earlier, Retrofit Big Planet does seem to be a really nice home for you, and that, I'm glad that they're putting out The Winner, and I hope that you find a home there.
Thanks, Derek. Me too. I just got to bribe him, I guess.
Okay, looking forward to The Winner, which is going to be released on May 23rd. Karl, thank you very much for coming back on the Comics Alternative. It's definitely a pleasure talking with you again.
Anytime, Derek. Likewise. I hope I didn't sound too crazy this time.
Not at all. I want to thank Karl Stevens for coming back on the Comics Alternative once again and discussing his work. It was a joy talking with him. And if you want to find other great comics, then you'll do well to check out the website of our sponsor, Discount Comic Book Service. Go to dcbservice.com, and there you'll find all sorts of discounts. That's dcbservice.com. And after you do get your titles there, get in touch with me and let me know what you thought about my conversation with Karl. If you go to our website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you can leave us a voice message online via SpeakPipe. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way by picking up your phone and dialing 4153-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427. You can also email us. We're 2guys@comicsalternative.com, or you can email me directly at derek@comicsalternative.com. And you can also find us all over the social media sphere. We have accounts on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, Pinterest, YouTube, Slack, and Discord. You can subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcasts. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on Spotify, on TuneIn, on iHeartRadio, and on Google Play Music. But you can find every single one of our episodes, as well as the reviews and comics-related commentary that we post on our blog, simply by going to our website, comicsalternative.com. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Karl Stevens, and we have more interviews lined up in the days to come, so be sure to check back for those. Until then, take care. Thank you.